Hello, friends, and welcome to Adventures in Pixieland. My name's Amy. I'm an ordained minister, and we're in Bible study. We are starting a brand new book of the Bible today. We are in Leviticus. Now, this is Leviticus, Leviticus. So now we're starting to get into more of, again, the Mosaic Law, which I know to some people is a surprise that it's beyond the Ten Commandments, but it is, though. So, because remember, the idea of this culture is not a nation of kings. It's not a nation of nobility. It's a nation of priests. That's what he wanted. A nation of priests. This is making up the laws that the priests need to live by. Leviticus. Okay, so it gets really specific. And what you eventually get to at the time of Jesus is that you have the Sadducees who don't believe in the soul at all. They believe in the law of man, which that's what this is to them. And then there's the Pharisees who believe in the soul. And they're very popular amongst the people. And they're more of our imprint for what makes a priest. Whereas for when we're starting to think of what it looks like to be, say, a person of faith in a political position, or in a, if you were a lawyer, but you also had faith, and you believed in your faith-based laws, this is what that looks like. That's the more of the imprint. So let's jump in. The burnt offering. The Lord, in case I forgot to mention, we're in the NIV, and we will be through the end of 2025. We're going to start the KJV in 2026. We're going to read as many versions of the Bible as we can. There's a lot, though, over 400. So we're not going to get to all of them, but we're going to get to as many as we can. The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, because that's where we left off last time. He's just going to hang out in the tent of meeting, and, mostly people aren't going to go in there. Except Aaron, who has to wear belts, or his sons, who have to wear belts when they go in there, so they don't get smited. He said, "Speak to the Israelites, and say to them, when any of you brings an offering to the Lord, bring as your offering an animal from either the herd or the flock. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he is to offer a male without defect. He must present it at the entrance to the tent of meeting, so that it, he, will be acceptable to the Lord. He is to lay his hands on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on his behalf to make atonement for him." This is pretty specific. So basically only men bringing these things. "He is to slaughter the young bull before the Lord, and then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall bring the blood and sprinkle it against the altar on all sides at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces." I'm very sorry if you're a vegan out there. You probably find all of this to be very atrocious. But it's what's written. So it's what I'm reading. Also understand that the sacrifice of animals was supposed to make them stop and not just rampantly sin. Just because you were sacrificing someone's life. The sons of Aaron, the priest, are to put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. Then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall arrange the pieces, including the head and the fat, on the burning wood that is on the altar. He is to wash the inner parts and the legs with water, and the priest is to burn all of it on the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. If the offering is burnt from the flock, either from the sheep or the goats, so the herd, cows and bulls, oxen, if you will. Okay. He is to slaughter it at the north side of the altar before the Lord. And Aaron's sons, the priests, shall sprinkle its blood against the altar and all sides. I think sometimes they said donkeys too, but not common. Because I don't think donkeys are something they're supposed to eat. But I don't really. Keep going. He is to cut it into pieces, and the priest shall arrange them, including the head and the fat, on the burning wood that is on the altar. He is to wash the inner parts and the legs with water, and the priest is to bring all of it and burn it on the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. So this would mean that they have to know how to butcher animals in order to do this job. Just so you understand. That's one of their, so this is one of their primary responsibilities. If they're going to bring these burnt offerings, besides making sure that they're purely sanctified so God doesn't smite them, they have to know how to butcher an animal. Or they're not going to be able to bring them the right stuff. Now, I do suspect that this was commonplace knowledge back at the time that this was, because there were no grocery stores, so you had to know how to butcher an animal if you wanted to feed your family. If you had flocks and herds, you probably knew how to butcher an animal. Most people were some form of herder or farmer at this point, or, like a vineyard, olive oils, whatever it was, or they worked for one of those people during this time frame in history. Okay, so there weren't all these types of professions we have now. Verse 14. If the offering to the Lord is burnt offering of birds, he is to offer a dove or a young pigeon. The priest shall bring it to the altar, wring off the head, that's too terrible, and burn it on the altar. Its blood shall be drained out on the side of the altar, and he is to remove the crop with its contents, or the crop and the feathers. The Hebrew word for this is uncertain. Okay. But I understand what they're talking about. And throw it on the east side of the altar where the ashes are. He shall tear it open by the wings, not severing it completely. And then the priest shall burn it on the wood that is on the fire for the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. The bird offerings, pretty specifically, were to make it so that if you were a person who was not having flocks or anything else, you could go catch one and then offer it. Because you likely would have gone and caught one to eat it. And quails and a bunch of other stuff. If you were living in the middle of the desert where meat was scarce, the meat you could find, you would likely be willing to eat. There are a lot of native tribes out here who would tell you exactly that. So were in the history of them. Unfortunately, there's only so many left in the area that I'm living in. But there are tribes still out here. So if you were to ever come to the area, you can feel free to attend all of their various museums, which I highly recommend, and learn more about how one does have to survive in the desert if you wanted to have an understanding. Until next time, friends.